Hey everyone, I am Magical Hacker, and this is episode number 17 of the Eminence Podcast, the non-CEDH Commander podcast where I help you in the command zone with your deck building skills and on the battlefield with your deck piloting skills. This podcast is brought to you by MTG Orzo and the rest of my patrons at patreon.com/magicalhacker. Today we will be discussing the topic, rating every single rare and mythic from the sets of Phyrexia All Will Be One. Of course, when this set came out, there was multiple other sets that came with it. So the three sets that we'll be talking about have the codes ONE, PONE, and ONC. Those are the sets that we're looking at. We're looking at the rares and mythics that are non-reprints, and we'll be discussing them in two axes. So first of all, for each of these cards, we'll be asking how good is this in the 99 of a deck. And then if it's a legal commander, we'll also be asking how good is this as a commander. For the rating it in the 99, I do have a method to my madness, I suppose you could say, where I'm thinking about a card and taking a look at what it could be in the best possible situation and then deducting points for each time I'm having to reduce how good it is in that context. So, for example, if I've got a card that is excellent in all or almost all commander decks, then that gets the letter S as the rating. That's the highest possible rating. If it's not excellent, but it is really good, then it'll get downgraded to an A. Again, really good in all or almost all decks gets a rating of A because it's not excellent, but it's really good. If it is excellent, but it's not in all decks, it's really just multiple types of decks, that I can also get a letter A because it's excellent, but it's multiple types of decks, not all decks. If it's really good in multiple types of decks, then we're getting it downgraded again. One more letter, now it's down to B. And we can go down S, A, B, C, D, and then the very bottom is F, where it's not excellent, it's not really good, it's not even good but not great, it is slightly better than bad in maybe just like one type of deck, and that's it. So that's the lowest rating we can get is F, where at the very best, this card is slightly better than bad in one type of deck. So that's the way I'm rating for the cards in terms of how good they are in 99. If it's a commander, the way I'm rating it is a lot more subjective because I don't have a way to create a chart where I'm talking about how good the commander is. Because if it doesn't do enough, then it's not a good commander. But if it does too much, now it's too scary, you'll probably die before you can do anything. So again, it's not a very good commander. What we're looking for is something in that sweet spot where it's good, but not scary. And so that means that it's a little bit tougher for people to get an idea of what a good commander is. So I'm rating it from S to F. S being it's very easy to win with a commander like this. F being it would be very hard to win with a commander like this. So let's start talking about the cards that got rated F. We'll just get them out of the way, and we'll try not to spend too much time talking about the cards that are essentially the cream of the crap. Okay, that's the Argentum Masticore, Monument to Perfection, the Filigree Silex, the Seed Core, Zenith Chronicler, Black Sun's Twilight, Vran Executioner Thane, which got a rating of C as commander, Kothfire of Resistance, which got the letter F, Vindictive Flamestoker, which got the letter F, Volshock Factory, Evolved Spinoderm, and then Miglaw's Maze Crusher, which also got an F as commander. And so those are the F-rated cards. Let's go to the D-rated cards, which are Kemba's Banner, Might Overseer, Norn's Decree, Blade of Shared Souls, Mirage Mockery, Synthesis Pod, Geth's Summons, Kinzu of the Bleak Coven, which got rating C as commander, Capricious Hellraiser, Dragonwing Glider, Gold Warden's Gambit, Bloated Contaminator, Contaminant Grafter, Glissa's Retriever, Venerated Rot Priest, Ixchel, Scion of Atraxa, which got a letter D as the grade for the commander, Luca Bound to Ruin, Malira the Living Cure, which got rated D as commander, Nahiri the Unforgiving, Rhea Evor, Bane of Bladehold, which got rating F as commander, Tyvar Jubilant Brawler, and Venser Corpse Puppet, which got rating F as commander. And then one last group of cards here. These are the C-rated cards. Side note, I'll talk about this at the end too. There are two cards here that got changed to a C. One got upgraded, one got downgraded based on some feedback I got on this Twitter thread that I wrote everything out for people to talk about. If you want to see the full list, you want to read each card and why I gave it a rating F, D, or C, and why I didn't talk about it. I've got everything there in that Twitter thread. You'll see the link down in the description if you're on YouTube. If you're on Spotify, it is also in the description, so you can take a look there as well. So the C grade cards are Glistening Sphere, Graz Unstoppable Juggernaut, which got rated D as Commander, Lux Artillery, Mirren Safehouse, Mirex, Soulless Jailer, the Monumental Facade, Skyhunter Strike Force, Encroaching Mycosynth, Jace the Perfected Mind, Tekuthal Inquiry Dominus, which got rated C as Commander, Archfiend of the Dross, Phyresis Outbreak, Chiss Joria, Forged Tyrant, which got rated D as Commander, Roar of Resistance, Goliath Hatchery, Green Sun's Twilight, Tangleweave Armor, Wormquake, Atraxa Grand Unifier, which got rated C as Commander, Jorkadine First Gold Warden, got rated D as Commander, and then Vishgraz the Doomhive, which also got rated D as Commander. The two cards here that got changed are Graz Unstoppable Juggernaut, which initially I had rated very low. I think I had rated an F. And then people said, well, technically, if you're playing tokens that have built-in evasion, it might be better than what you're thinking. And after thinking about that, I think they're right. I mean, it's not certainly the best card in a situation like that, but I definitely think that it's much better than an F. So I got it upgraded to a letter grade C. And then the other one here, Tekuthal Inquiry Dominus, I actually had rated higher because I had misread the card. I thought we could remove counters from enchantments with it. We can't do that, and so that means that it's not as good as I thought, because I was hoping to use it with sagas, to remove counters from the sagas, but can't do it, so it was not as good as what I thought, so it got bumped down to C. So those are all the F-rated, D-rated, and C-rated cards. So let's go ahead and talk about the other cards. What are the actual good cards? And we're going to start off by talking with the colorless cards. I do want to start off one real quick side note about one of the keyword abilities in the set, which is Corrupted. And the reason why I want to talk about it is technically the second card I talk about in this thread is Glistening Sphere, which has a Corrupted ability. And I wanted to make that side note now because it will come up in the future. And what I said then and what I continue to say now is that to make Corrupted cards work, you have to do something which makes you very threatening. However, if you do that thing too good, then Corrupted cards are offline again. So it looks way scarier than it actually is, making it truly a trap that should be avoided in multiplayer EDH. In other words, when we look at Corrupted, which is any ability that cares about an opponent having 3 or more poison counters, that ability is not turned on until we do something to make an opponent lose or gain 3 poison counters. When we do that, especially if we're trying to do it quickly, our opponents will become afraid of us because we made somebody have 3 poison counters. It's very difficult to get rid of those poison counters. I can only think of one card that does that. So when you have it, it's permanent, right? However, if you do it too good, you can accidentally give somebody 10 poison counters, and then they're gone, and your Corrupted cards are back offline. And so you have to try to get them close to dead, but not exactly dead. And so that makes you kind of a threat, but not really threatening enough to be able to win the game. So really, this whole thing, Corrupted is like the worst of both worlds, where you're trying to make yourself look scary, but you're not able to use that to win the game, because if you do that, then your Corrupted cards go back offline. So it's, again, like I said, the worst of both worlds. So that's one side note about a Corrupted, and that's why a lot of Corrupted cards didn't get rated as highly as maybe other people had thought. So let's jump to the first good card that I mentioned here in this this thread. When I say good card, I mean rating an A, B, or S, either as a commander or in the 99. And the first one here is Staff of Completion. 3 mana artifact. You can tap and pay 1 life to destroy target permanent you own, or you can tap and pay 2 life to add 1 mana of any color, or you can tap and pay 3 life to proliferate, or you can tap and pay 4 life to draw a card, or you can pay 5 mana to untap Staff of Completion. I give this a rating of B, because the first 2 abilities that drive how playable this are the 3 life and the 4 life abilities. If you're a life gain deck, this is probably good enough card draw, and if you're a proliferate deck, this is probably good enough proliferation. So that's why I gave it a rating of B. Next up, we've got Sword of Forge and Frontier. Sorry, I said Sorge. That's not a word. Sword of Forge and Frontier. 3 mana for an equipment with Equip 2 that says equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from red and green. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. You may play an additional land this turn. So this is an excellent card for any deck that has a commander that costs 4 or less. That's why I gave it a rating of A. The turn after you cast your commander, you can then cast this, equip it, attack through blockers, and potentially ramp. Each turn after that, you get card draw, and the creature has protection from red board wipes and from fighting, which is typically in green. So, Sword of Fortune Frontier, for a long time, I thought this is probably my favorite card from this set. Of course, after going through each card and doing this rating exercise, I found there's probably another one that's maybe even better. But this one's very, very good in this set, and I definitely like this a lot, especially for equipment decks. Next, we've got Tablet of Completion, 2 mana for an artifact. Tap to put an oil counter on it. You can tap it and add colorless. However, you can only activate that ability if it has two or more oil counters on it. You could also pay 1 and tap it to draw a card, but activate that ability only if it has 5 or more oil counters on it. I gave this a rating of B because if you're playing a proliferate deck, or let's say a deck that's wanting to untap artifacts a bunch, then this is a very, very good source of card draw. I don't even think it's playable outside of those decks though. So really, just proliferate or an untapping artifact based deck for that card. Next up, we've got the Mycosynth Gardens. This is a sphere land. You can tap it for a colorless. You can also pay 1 and tap it to add 1 mana of any color. But it's got an ability here, pay X and tap. The Mycosynth Gardens becomes a copy of target non-token artifact you control with mana value X. So with Mycosynth Gardens, this is honestly, it's an A rating card because it's so good in any deck that has non-creature artifacts that it would want to copy. Of course, you can think about how most decks are playing Sol Ring. And if you look at it that way, there's not much cost to having this in the deck just in case. But there's so many utility lands, so it's really a matter of, would my deck want to sacrifice a land to copy one of my non-token artifacts? If the answer to that question is yes, then Mycosynth Gardens is probably worth it as a utility land in that deck. So certainly something I think was worth considering. All right, next let's go to Clever Concealment. This is the first white card of the podcast. We've got 4 mana for an instant with Convoke. Convoke is an ability that says your creatures can help cast this spell. Each creature you tap while casting the spell pays for 1 generic or 1 mana of that creature's color. And then it says any number of target non-land permanents you control phase out. So you treat them and anything attached to them as though they don't exist until your next turn, which is amazing on an instant card. That's kind of crazy, which is why I gave this a rating of A, because even though technically I personally believe that mass reanimation is much stronger than board wipe protection, because you can just rebuild rather than keep your deck, keep your board state there. So I like that more. I think it's a little bit easier to continue to build your board. You don't have to hold up mana. But if you're playing a token deck, this one certainly seems a lot better because you can't just use reanimation to get your tokens back. Those tokens are gone. So if you've got a token deck, this is certainly better than the mass reanimation plan. If you're playing a Vigilance heavy deck, this is also a really, really good card because your creatures aren't tapped anyways. You can use that Convoke ability to cast the spell. So really, really good card. Rating of A here for Clever Concealment. Next up, we've got Elesh Norn, Mother of Machines. 5 mana legendary 4/7 Phyrexian Praetor with Vigilance that says if a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Permanents entering the battlefield don't cause abilities of permanents your opponents to trigger. So this one got a rating of B. As a commander, though, it's certainly a lot lower. I gave it a rating as D for commander because clearly this is a staple for blink decks and landfall decks, but I think it's not the most sensible inclusion outside of decks that synergize with it. As commander, it is super scary, making it a little bit more difficult to actually win with. That is Elesh Norn, Mother of Machines. Next up, we've got Glimmer Lens. This is a 2 mana equipment for equip cost of 1 generic and 1 white. It has the ability for Mirrodin, which says when this equipment enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 red rebel creature token, then attach this to it. And then it has the ability, whenever equipped creature and at least one other creature attack, draw a card. I gave this a rating of A because even though I know not all decks are interested in attacking with 2 or more creatures every turn, you have to remember there are a lot of decks that are interested in that. And so in those decks, this is like a 2 to 4 mana Phyrexian Arena that can be tutored up with a Steel Shaper's Gift. So this is a card that I'm a really big fan of. An equipment deck might like this one. Really any deck that's going to be wanting to attack with creatures every combat, I think is going to like this card a lot. Next up, we've got Kemba Ka Enduring. 2 mana for a legendary 2/2 cat cleric that says, whenever it or another cat enters the battlefield under your control, attach up to 1 target equipment you control to that creature. Equipped creatures you control get +1/+1, and then you can also say that by paying 5 mana, you can create a 2/2 white cat creature token. So as a card in the 99, this is not that great. This is really only making sense if you're playing a lot of cats and a lot of equipment, which I don't know how many decks are like that out there. So as a card itself, it gets a rating of D. And even if we, somehow had a deck like that, what is it doing? Well, it's only cheating equip costs once per creature. So that's not even that great. But let's say you're a commander and you want to have this as your commander deck. Yeah, this is a rating of B because you can really fly under the radar with this one, and you can do some really cool things where you're playing equipment with high equip costs that allow you to win kind of out of nowhere by having enough haste enablers on your equipment. And so there's lots of really cool things that you can do with Kemba as the commander. Not the easiest, it's not an A, it's not an S, but it's a B. I think that's fine. Okay, next up, let's go to Mondrak Glory Dominus. 4 mana for a legendary 4/4 Phyrexian Horror. It says if 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many of those tokens are created instead. You can also pay 1 generic and 2 Phyrexian white mana and sacrifice 2 other artifacts and or creatures to put an indestructible counter on Mondrak Glory Dominus. White Phyrexian mana can be paid either with white mana or 2 life for each of them. So, as a card in the 99, I think this gets a rating of A. Because in token decks, treasure decks, and clue decks, this card is excellent. It's a potentially indestructible token doubler, and it's a great inclusion for making good cards into amazing cards. As a commander, though, I think it's going to get a lot of heat, honestly, because it's one of those things that's going to come down, your opponents are going to be afraid of it, people already know it's a very good card, and then they see that you can give it indestructible, and so, yeah, it's going to be tough to actually use it to win the game, but, as a card in the 99, I think it makes a lot more sense. Okay, next up, Norn's Choirmaster. 5 mana for a 5/4 Phyrexian Angel with flying and first strike that says whenever a commander you control enters a battlefield or attacks, proliferate. This one gets a rating of B because if you value proliferation and your deck is all about proliferating, you're going to want to have this card in your deck. It's a perfect card for it. If your commander attacks, you can get the proliferate off of this Norn's Choirmaster. If you're not really into the commander attacking, you can still use this card with blinking, but really your proliferate deck has to either want your commander to attack or to be playing blink effects. You have to use one of those in order to really want to have Norn's Choirmaster in the deck, which is why it just gets a rating of B here. Next up, Norn's Wellspring. 2 mana for an artifact that says whenever a creature you control dies, scry 1 and put an oil counter on Norn's Wellspring. You can pay 1 mana, tap it, and remove 2 oil counters from it to draw a card. This one gets a rating of B because aristocrat decks have many, many ways to draw cards, and yet this one still feels to me like among the top 10 of all those ways. So if you're playing a proliferate deck, you might actually want this one too. It's not as good, but it's still worth considering. I definitely like Norn's Wellspring here as a way to draw cards, especially for aristocrat decks, which is why I gave it a rating of B here. Next up, we've got Phyrexian Vindicator, 4 mana for a 5/5 Phyrexian Horror with flying that says if damage would be dealt to Phyrexian Vindicator, prevent that damage. When damage is prevented this way, Phyrexian Vindicator deals that much damage to any other target. This one also gets a rating of B. Combined with the many red and white spells that can make sure your own creatures are dealt lots of damage, this card becomes really powerful. And that's not even thinking about how it's a 5/5 flyer for just 4 mana. So I think this is a great combo piece, and even in decks that are wanting to do attacking, that makes a lot of sense here too. Next up, we've got Skrelv, Defector Might. It's a 1 mana legendary artifact 1/1 Phyrexian Might with Toxic 1, meaning players dealt combat damage by this creature also get a poison counter. It has the ability also that it cannot block, but we can pay a Phyrexian White, tap it, in order to choose a color, another target creature you control gains Toxic 1 and Hexproof from that color until end of turn, and it can't be blocked by creatures of that color this turn. So as a commander, it gets a rating of B, and in the 99, it also gets a rating of B. The way I see it, this isn't strictly worse or better than Mother of Runes, but it does fill the same role. It can't protect itself, but it does give Toxic 1. It does have Toxic 1. As a commander, it's pretty versatile at getting a win through there, but it's 1 mana. It may be generating a little bit of heat, and so I didn't want to give it more than a B, because it might be slightly easy to win with it, but nothing too crazy, I would say. Next up, we've got Skrelv's Hive. This is a 2-mana enchantment that says at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and create a 1/1 colorless Phyrexian Might artifact creature token with Toxic 1, and this creature can't block. And then, here we go, we have a corrupted ability that says, as long as an opponent has 3 or more poison counters, creatures you control with Toxic have lifelink. This card I gave a rating of B. For token decks, the fact that these tokens aren't evasive doesn't matter, because those decks give evasion to those tokens later anyways. For artifact sacrificing or creature sacrificing decks, this is extremely efficient. Really good in multiple decks. Gets a rating of B. Okay, next up, let's jump to Staff of the Storyteller. This is a 2-mana artifact that says when it enters the battlefield, to create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Whenever you create 1 or more creature tokens, put a story counter on Staff of the Storyteller. You can pay 1 white mana and tap it to remove a story counter from it, and by doing so, you'll get to draw a card. This gets a rating of A. In token decks, blink decks, and proliferate decks, this is a very good card to include for card draw. Interestingly, this is the 3rd mono-white card for card draw in the set, so I'm definitely seeing a lot of white card draw happening in ways that are actually very good. I definitely like Staff of the Storyteller. If I had to pick one card that I think is like my favorite card from the set, not necessarily that's the most powerful, but it's my personal favorite, I like Staff of the Storyteller quite a lot. I don't know if I'm going to be including it in any of my decks. I do have a token-based deck, but it's also got green and blue, so I don't know if I can find a spot for this one with so many other ways to draw cards that are really powerful in those colors. But I'm still going to keep it in the back of my mind because it's just such a cool card. All right, next up, let's go to the first S card of the set. And this actually might be the most powerful card in this set. I have a hard time thinking of anything that may be even better than this one. There's another one that may be better because it's also an S, but this one's really good. So if this is either the number 1 or number 2 most powerful card in the set, in my opinion. And that is the Eternal Wanderer. 6 mana for a legendary planeswalker with no subtype. Enters the battlefield with 5 loyalty counters. It has a static ability that says no more than 1 creature can attack the Eternal Wanderer each combat. You can +1 to exile up to 1 target artifact or creature. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. You can pay 0 to create a 2/2 white samurai creature token with double strike. Or you can -4, and for each player, you choose a creature that player controls. Each player sacrifices all creatures they control not chosen this way. So this one gets a rating of S. It is very, very good. It's I would say this one definitely fits that idea of it's a excellent card in almost every deck. Because if you're playing a Planeswalker deck, a Blink deck, a Token deck, a Voltron deck, I mean, this is obviously excellent. But because of that last ability, this is really good in every other deck too. So is it better than Farewell? That's another question, but it's still very good. And so if someone didn't want to play Farewell, let's say it's not on theme, but the Eternal Wanderer was, this is certainly a very good card. It's going to do that job of being a board wipe. And is it better than Farewell? I don't know. I actually can't say it's worse than it or better than it. I think it's in a very similar class. They do fill different roles, but they're both kind of similar. So the Eternal Wanderer, I think, is a very good card to include for pretty much any deck, honestly. All right, last white card here, White Sun's Twilight. This one I gave a rating of B. It's a sorcery that costs X and 2 white that says you gain X life, create X 1/1 colorless Phyrexian Might artifact creature tokens with Toxic 1, and this creature can't block. If X is 5 or more, destroy all other creatures. Remember, Toxic 1 means that players dealt combat damage by a creature with Toxic 1 also get a poison counter. This one I gave a rating of B because in a token deck, in an artifact deck, or in a life gain deck, this could potentially make the cut for board wipes in that deck. But this is what really kind of sealed the deal for me. In a deck with lots of non-creature sources of haste enabling, technically this could be a powerful win condition, where let's say you have a Fervor on the battlefield. That's an enchantment that says all creatures you control have haste. You can technically pay 12 mana for this White Sun's Twilight, destroy all creatures, create 10 1/1s with Toxic 1. They're given haste by Fervor, so that way you can then attack with them and deal 10 poison counters to somebody. And you don't have to pay 12 mana. If you've already been doing poison counters to them in some other way, then maybe you have to pay just 7 mana for this or something, right? So there's lots of different ways that this card could be really good as a board wipe, but then there are even these decks where it's like it's a win condition. So I think that's certainly something you want to keep in mind. All right, next up, let's start with the first blue spell, which is the Blue Sun's Twilight. Kind of a nice symmetry there. This costs X and 2 blue for a sorcery that says, gain control of target creature with mana cost value X or less. If X is 5 or more, create a token that's a copy of that creature too. This one gets a rating of A. You have to know, theft cards they're really close to my heart. And that's because I feel like they're almost always helpful to have. This is an expensive one, right? You're paying a lot of mana to steal whatever you want to get, but there is that additional benefit. If you're a Spellslinger deck, if you're a theft deck, if you're a deck that cares about X mana cost cards, if you're a token or proliferate deck, then honestly this is better than really good. This is an excellent card to include in those multiple types of decks. And that is Blue Sun's Twilight. Next up, let's go to Ikarumun Gauntlet. This is a 3 mana artifact that says, Planeswalkers you control have 0 to proliferate and -12 to take an extra turn after this one. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, choose a counter on target permanent, put an additional counter of that kind on that permanent. I give this one a rating of B, because looking at this card, it's kind of obvious, but this card is pretty bad in most decks. But in Super Friends decks, it actually could technically be one of the scariest in the 99. It's almost as scary as Doubling Season or Deep Glow Skate. Not quite better, but it's almost to that level, because it's really, really powerful. If you've got 3 Planeswalkers on the battlefield, you can use 2 of your Planeswalkers to double proliferate every turn. And so that is like essentially all of your opponents having +3 abilities, at least. And so if you're just proliferating, if that's all you're doing. If you're doing other stuff too, you're doing other stuff too, that's even better. So Ikarumun Gauntlet, rating of B. Next up, we've got Mercurial Spelldancer. This is a 2 mana 2/1 Phyrexian Rogue that can't be blocked that says, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put an oil counter on Mercurial Spelldancer. Whenever Mercurial Spelldancer deals combat damage to a player, you may remove 2 oil counters from it. If you do, when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. This gets a rating of B, because in a Spellslinger deck, this is a really powerful creature. But it could also be a fair inclusion in any deck that wants a cheap, unblockable creature that can sometimes provide additional benefit. So keep that in mind with Mercurial Spelldancer. You might be seeing this in your Spellslinger decks that your opponents are playing. It's pretty good. It's a way to be able to get additional copies of instants and sorceries. You do have to hit twice with it first, so maybe they're going to be getting extra combats. Maybe they're going to be trying to give it double strike. Maybe they're playing proliferate, so they can do that every combat. It really depends on what they want to do, but essentially this is a way to get free token or free spell copying, which is definitely pretty nice. Okay, next up, Mind Splice Apparatus. This is a 4 mana artifact with flash that says, at the beginning of your upkeep, put an oil counter on Mind Splice Apparatus, and then instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each oil counter on Mind Splice Apparatus. This one gets a rating of A, because in Spellslinger decks and in classic control decks, which are also known as draw go decks, this card can be extremely powerful at allowing really strong turns. In fact, Storm decks are yet another type of deck that would get a huge boost from this card, so that's why I think it definitely deserves that rating of A here. Next, we've got Serum Sovereign, 5 mana for a 4/4 Phyrexian Sphinx with flying that says, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put an oil counter on Serum Sovereign. You can also pay 1 mana, remove an oil counter from it to draw a card, then scry 2. This card gets a rating of B, because with the exception of creature-based decks that aren't able to proliferate, this card is a good but not necessarily great card to include. If you're doing a scry-based deck, though, it could be really good in that deck. It's just, it's 5 mana, you're paying 1 mana, draw 1 card. You really got to find something else that you're going to be using this card for, so that's why it gets a rating of B here. Okay, next card that we're going to talk about here actually did get a rating of D in the 99, but in the as a commander, it was a little bit different. So I want to talk about that one here as well. And that is none other than Unctus Grand Metatect. This is a 3-mana legendary artifact 2/4 Phyrexian Vidalcan that says other blue creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes tapped, draw a card, then discard a card. Some other abilities here on Unctus. It says other artifact creatures you control get +1/+1. Then you can also pay 1 blue Phyrexian mana, so that until end of turn, target creature you control becomes a blue artifact in addition to its other colors and types, but you can activate that only as a sorcery. Remember, this is a Phyrexian blue mana, so you could pay 1 blue mana, or you could pay 2 life for it. As a card in the 99, again, it gets a rating of D, but as a commander, it's a B. Because really, this is much better in the command zone than in the 99. Blue combat-based decks could maybe benefit from this, but I don't know how many of those types of decks there really are. I know there are a good number of them, but it's not a huge thing that blue does anyways. However, as a commander, it does have 2 combo routes. You can first use Epheto Alchemist creatures in order to, you can tap and untap the creatures themselves in order to go through your whole deck and then eventually win with Thassa's Oracle. Or you could use things like Soul Conduit, where you're trying to switch life totals with an opponent, although that's not something you're going to necessarily do a whole lot outside of Soul Conduit or Mirror Universe if you're playing this as your commander, because it's mono blue. But still, you've got blue. There's lots of ways to tutor up artifacts, so you can get out the Soul Conduit. You can then use that Soul Conduit in combination with Unctus and really do a lot of cool stuff by switching life totals with opponents. So that's something to definitely consider. Okay, that was the last blue card that we'll be talking about. Let's go ahead and jump into talking about the black cards, starting off with Drivnod, Carnage Dominus. 5 mana for a legendary 8/3 Phyrexian horror that says, if a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. You can also pay 2 black Phyrexian mana and exile 3 cards from your graveyard to put an indestructible counter on Drivnod Carnage Dominus, meaning you could pay 2 black mana, or you could pay 4 life, or you could do some combination there, right? So paying 4 life and exiling 3 cards from your graveyard, that might be an easy way to put an indestructible counter on it. So in the 99, I gave this a rating of B, and as a commander, I think this is actually an A. So in Aristocrats, this card doubles up all your Blood Artist effects, and actually a lot of other effects too, which have powerful rewards when you're sacrificing your own creatures. As a commander, though, it doesn't necessarily ring the alarm bells for your opponents, but it is pretty effective for an Aristocrats deck. So I think that's something certainly to keep in mind. Okay, next up, let's start talking about some cards here that are good in the 99, but not that great as commander. Starting off with Geth, Thane of Contracts. As a card in the 99, I gave it a rating of B, but as a commander, it's a rating of C. Let's read off this card. It's a 3-mana legendary 3/4 Phyrexian zombie. It says other creatures you control get -1/-1. Ouch, that's a pretty big downside. Let's keep going. 3 mana and tap it to return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Hey, that's pretty good. It gains if this creature would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. Okay, that's another downside. Activate this only as a sorcery. Wow, another downside. This is like downsides after downsides after downsides. So I know this sounds kind of crazy, but the way I want to use this is actually to donate it. Because if our opponents are using this on their own creatures, then those creatures die. They don't have access to them anymore. They're doing it at sorcery speed, so we're not going to get really blown out of the water, too much. And they're making their own creatures smaller, so yeah, donate Geth away, honestly. As a commander, probably most of your wins happen by getting super underestimated, but it's not a great card to be trying to build around unless, like I said, you want to do some donating shenanigans, but that's not easy to do when you're playing mono black. Next up, we've got Karamonix the Rat King. 3 mana for a legendary 3/3 Phyrexian rat with Toxic 1, and other rats you control have Toxic 1. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal any number of rat cards from among them and put the revealed cards into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. In the 99 of a rat tribal deck, this makes a lot of sense as a rating B card. As a commander, I gave it a rating of D, and you'll see exactly why. Because rat tribal decks, there are a couple of different ways to build with them. And in the 99, this can be an amazing lord that can carry the swarm to a win out of nowhere, unless your opponents know about it beforehand, and that's exactly what happens if you make it your commander. Your opponents will see it and be like, oh my gosh, toxic rats. Okay, I got to take this player out. So that's why as a commander I gave it a rating of D. It's not very good, but in the 99 of a rat tribal deck, it's pretty good. All right, next up, let's go to Monumental Corruption. This is a 5-mana sorcery that says target player draws X cards and loses X life, where X is the number of artifacts you control. This is a pretty interesting card. I gave it a rating of B. In artifact-heavy decks, including treasure decks, this card doubles both as a massive card draw slot and as a win con against a player whose life total has already been substantially reduced. I still prefer repeatable card draw to burst card draw like we see here on this card, but I still think it's something to consider, which is why I gave it a rating of B. Next up, let's jump to, I think the second Planeswalker here that we're talking about, which is Vraska, Betrayal's Sting. This is a 6-mana legendary 6 loyalty Vraska Planeswalker. Now, one of its mana rather, does cost a black Phyrexian mana, so it has the completed ability, meaning you can pay that Phyrexian mana with mana or with life, but if you pay life for it, the Planeswalker enters with 2 fewer loyalty counters, so instead it'll enter with 4. You can pay 0 in order to draw a card and lose 1 life, proliferate. Of course, that's one of the loyalty abilities here. You can -2, target creature becomes a treasure artifact with tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color, and loses all other card types and abilities. And then -9, if target player has fewer than 9 poison counters, they get a number of poison counters equal to the difference. I gave this a rating of A. In a Super Friends deck, of course, this goes without saying, this is an excellent card, but this is just as powerful in decks that proliferate without Planeswalkers. So -1/-1 counters, energy, charge counters, all that stuff. Possibly one of the best Planeswalkers for Commander from this set. Of course, the Eternal Wanderer I did give a higher rating, so it makes more sense that I'm happy about that one. And so that's Vraska, Betrayal's Sting. We've got a good number of cards to continue on, so I actually think we're going to do this as a part 2. So be on the lookout for part 2 here for the rating of the cards from these sets. So essentially, that's my take. If you disagree or if you have any comments, please leave me a comment at youtube.com/magicalhackermtg or a tweet at twitter.com/magical__hacker. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. If you want to pick the topic for an episode of the Eminence podcast, check out patreon.com/magicalhacker. In fact, the topic for the next episode will be rating every single rare and mythic from the sets of Phyrexia, All Will Be One, part 2. So make sure to subscribe on YouTube or follow on Spotify to get notified of that episode when it comes out. Thank you again to MTG Orzo. Thank you to all of my patrons, and thank you for listening. Stay awesome, everybody.